So my name is Richard Isaacson. Thank you, Randy, and thank you, Nicole, so much, and thank you to Palm Health Foundation. Thanks to everyone for being here. I know it's like post-COVID, and there hasn't been too many of these things. I did a program yesterday, actually. Every seat was full. We were at Harbor's Edge. You know where that is? That was quite a rowdy group. I'm not going to tell you what the story about what happened at the end and anyway, but just no violence tonight, everybody. If you want to ask me questions, it's cool. Just don't smack anyone with anything. That happened yesterday. But anyway, moral of the story is, I'm really glad you're here in person. For people that are watching, I hope this is helpful. I'm going to try to talk for about 30, 35, 40 minutes, not much longer than that. I want to leave ample time for questions, because this is your opportunity to ask questions. Any hard questions, we've got Randy right here, so no problem. The easy, medium questions, I'll take care of those. We're going to try to tell you a little bit about the past, present, and future of Alzheimer's disease prevention. And back when I was in medical school 20 plus years ago, we didn't really talk about treatments for Alzheimer's disease. And the term Alzheimer's and prevention absolutely never went in the same sentence. Today, I really believe that it's time to start using those words together. And I'm going to try to convince you today why we can say that. There is no magic pill, no one magic potion, a magic bullet to prevent or cure Alzheimer's. Every time we see a patient, we always have a motto: we promise not to overpromise. There are some people that can do everything right and still get Alzheimer's disease, okay? I know too many of those people, including members of my own family. But there are other people, based on the latest evidence, that suggests the 2020 Lancet Commission, this is like a major journal, the best journal I would say outside of the United States, the 2020 Lancet Commission stated that, this is a conservative estimate, that 4 out of every 10 cases of dementia may be preventable if that person does everything right. That's good enough for me. And I think if we do a darn good job based on the most recent science, we can get that number closer to 50, maybe even 60%. But again, people could do every single thing that we tell you in this presentation and still get Alzheimer's. And that's why we need to keep the fight up and keep on working harder. Does that make sense? I'm going to talk a lot. Hopefully not too quickly, and hopefully my jokes don't kind of bond. Yesterday, some of my jokes went a little sideways. I don't know, I had this one joke, because I grew up in Long Island, and I was in Miami, and then I went to New York, and then Boca Raton, so there's the Seinfeld Brooklyn to Boca thing. No one laughed at that yesterday. I was so upset. I was waiting to bring back this joke, but my whole family's in Boca Raton. My mom's down Glades. My brother's on, I don't know, Mission Bay area. My sister's a little south of Margate. And it's great to be back. I've been all over the place, from New York, big Yankee fan. Spring training in Tampa. I missed most of the games because they canceled most of the games. But it's great to be back. And I'm going to try to give you an overview first of what the future brings. But if you want to learn a lot more about what you can do today to impact your brain health tomorrow, you may not get everything you need to know in this one little sitting. But at the end, I'm going to give you a link to a free course that will teach you everything you need to know. You can watch it on your cell phone, on your computer. It's easy. It's videos. It's 20 videos of me blabbing away, only 5 to 10 minutes each, across all the different brain health topics that you need to learn something about, okay? I'll give you the website now, because I feel like someone's going to ask for it, but at the end, I'm going to give you the website. It's Googleable. It's easy. faumedicine.org/ALZ. That's it. Nice and easy. And you can find it from there. 20 videos, easy to watch. They forgot hair and makeup, so I apologize. It was a few months. I had COVID a few months before. My hair was whatever. Anyway, it's okay. Deep breath. I talked to my therapist about it. He said it was okay. The video that you saw on the 23andMe website, also no hair and makeup. They flew me out to San Francisco, sat in a middle seat. It was it was all crowded. And yeah, no hair and makeup. And then they sent me on a red-eye back. So 23andMe is on my bad list. Anyway, so we're going to start with an overview, finish with questions. But again, if you really want to learn what to do to take control of your brain health, you can't learn it all right here. We're going to do that after class. Sound good? Okay. So this picture shows pieces of DNA. DNA are the building blocks of who we are. This picture shows people, and this picture shows different medicine bottles. And what this picture tries to show, if a person has a gene here, then it may cause a problem here, and they're going to need to take this medicine. But if a person has a problem there in the genetic code, and they may have a problem here, and they need to take that medicine. And this is a schematic, a diagram showing that genetics can drive certain medical changes. And if we understand what genetic background a person has, we can personalize or individualize a person's care. There's a statement that you may have heard. It's called, once you've seen one person with Alzheimer's, you've seen one person with Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is a very heterogeneous disease, meaning it presents differently. Okay? So one person can present with having trouble talking. Another person can present with having behavior trouble. Another person may have memory trouble and forget everything, but they may be the happiest person on earth and it doesn't bother them at all. Same disease, affecting different parts of the brain with different genetic markers. We have to treat those people individually, okay? 10, 15 years ago, I knew none of this. I couldn't even think about this. I never even thought about this. Now, each person, we look at genetics and we do a very deep dive. And the concept that we apply is something called precision medicine. We'll talk about that more in a little bit. So the goal here is with patients that we see, and again, this is a kind of a hybrid clinic and research setting. We try to take genetic testing and we try to personalize care based on genes as well as a host of other markers. Cholesterol markers, metabolism markers, inflammation, nutrition, and all of these components drive brain decline or brain protection. Okay? I believe that Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia are really not exactly purely brain diseases. They kind of are, but maybe exactly not, because medical conditions that affect the neck below can affect the brain. And these are the avenues that we try to apply to reduce a person's risk. There's going to be, I saw some statistic, I don't know, like trillions and trillions of sensors that our world will use every day by the year 2030, something like this. I'm mangling the statistic, but it's a lot of sensors. And then I said to myself, wait a minute, I have sensors right now. I got a sensor here. Actually, I have several sensors because it's tracking my movement, tracking my pulse. I have another sensor here that tracks my sleep, my cardiovascular disease recovery. I have a sensor here, believe it or not, that tracks my blood sugar at all times. So I'm all sensored up. And then wait a minute, there's probably sensors in here. I got sensors, well, I got a napkin in my pocket, no sensors there. And then I have this silly thing that probably has more sensors. I probably have 20, 30, 40 sensors on me right now. I'm only looking at data from maybe a dozen or so of those sensors. But this is the future of medicine. We're going to be tracking people at all times. My patients in the clinic, I can track anytime. I know that his code name is Zootboot. That's his code name. He's from Canada originally. He's in Miami now. And I know what his blood sugar is because he had a little too much wine with lunch today, and I heard beep, 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 beep. And my phone told me, and I could track. I just buzzed again. I think Zootboot is probably drinking a Corona for happy hour. Oh, Zootboot. And that's the way medicine is going. Currently, you know, some people like to wear these things, and currently, very few doctors incorporate this in clinical practice, but this is the future of medicine. In Canada, for example, and Zootboot's from Canada, this futuristic looking thing where you can track your blood sugar is available in the pharmacy over the counter. Here you need a prescription. So the future of medicine is going personalized, it's going digital, it's going biosensors, it's going genetics. And we're just starting to do this stuff on an everyday basis when our program kicks off later this summer. Blood. Most people think of Alzheimer's as a brain disease where you have to get a brain scan to figure out what's going on. Most people think of Alzheimer's and other neurodegenerative diseases in the brain. Dementias, there's lots of different causes of dementia. Alzheimer's is the most common form, 70% of the time, but there's other causes of dementias and neurodegeneration that can drive cognitive change in the brain. Most people think you got to get a brain scan or you got to get a spinal tap to get the fluid. No, not in 2022. We can get blood tests And there's actually, most people don't know this, a blood test for amyloid. And amyloid's the bad, sticky protein that builds up in the brain of a person with Alzheimer's. It's been available in 49 states for the last year, not New York City. Yes, in Florida. And under the right circumstances, in someone with progressive short-term memory decline, I don't even think we need to do brain scans anymore. But that's a different discussion. Amyloid tests in the blood become positive more quickly than the fluid that you can take from the back that surrounds the brain. You probably haven't heard that because that's new. Just figured this out in November. And further, there's now a new blood marker that you can check in the blood that's positive 19 years before the first symptom of memory loss begins. You heard it here first. And Randy, that's why you said that we're going to be thinking about things earlier and prevention. And I'm going to try to show you why we do that soon. So the future of Alzheimer's prevention, I really believe, is today. The problem is it's not scalable. Do you know how many hours we have to spend with one patient to figure out all this stuff? It's like impossible. And we had research funds, and we had personnel, and we had grants, and gifts, and foundations, and yada, yada, yada. And we did the best we could, but we only saw in, 8 years, 700 patients. That's a lot. Don't get me wrong. That's a lot. We helped a lot of people, and we did research with these patients, but we have 46 million Americans today in the United States that have Alzheimer's starting in their brains silently with no clinical symptoms. So we have to do a better job. And what I'm going to do today is try to figure out a path forward to help as many people as possible, because that's our mission. Round one was Alzheimer's Prevention Clinic, New York City. Plus we had a cohort in Puerto Rico. Unfortunately, Hurricane Maria hit. They lost power for 6 months, our 106 subjects. Didn't even get to go back to the clinic because it's flooded. We now have 9 sites internationally, actually called FAU. It's how I heard there was a brain place and all this cool stuff at the Stiles Nicholson, yada, yada. And I made some phone calls and I said, hey, you should join our cohort. We're doing this international study. We have 5 sites. Would you be the 6th? Next thing I know, I'm living in, what is it, Del Boca Vista? That's where Seinfeld's parents live. And literally, I live down the block from Kings Point, where Seinfeld's parents live. What the heck happened with that? Randy, what happened with that phone call? Jeez. So we now have 9 sites. We're going to get more people. We're going to scale up better. We're going to hopefully do it more efficiently. And hopefully over the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to write the instruction booklet that needs to be written first before we can scale this care much more broadly. And I'm going to show you a digital solution that I'm a consultant on, and an NIH-funded study that I really hope may be that path, but we need to do research and figure that out. So here's a picture. This is my family back in 1946. This is my family from Belarus, from Minsk. I used to say Russia, but now there's a weird connotation with Russia. And back then, Belarus was White Russia, so now I'm just going to say Belarus, but that's not got the best connotation either, because that's now where they're loading up all the whatever at. So I'll say Minsk. How's that? This is the Minsk side of the family. And they came over to Flatbush, Brooklyn in 1908, and this picture's from May 1946, my cousin Erwin's bar mitzvah. I don't know if anyone was there. I got a few laughs yesterday at Harbor's Edge on that one. That's the funny part, the good news, and then this is the bad news. Oops, wait, hold on a second. Sorry about that. So there's 4 people in this picture. I'm sorry that it's not showing up, but 4 people in this picture were about to be circled. That 4 people in this picture developed Alzheimer's disease. Okay, and up on the your left over here, that's my Uncle Bob. He's 31 years old in this picture. And I want to show you a little video that takes you inside the journey within my family and the journey within the brain of a person with Alzheimer's disease. So Alzheimer's disease begins in the brain over 20 years. Oh, there's no sound on this one. Okay. Yep, 20 years before the first symptom of memory loss begins. Decades, silently. And this is again my Uncle Bob, 31 years old. He's doing great. No symptoms, no pathology. His brain lights up nicely. He's 31. He's at stage 0, what I call primary prevention of Alzheimer's disease. But at age 45, he has normal memory, but you can see the brain is changing. The disease has started. He's 45 years old, and he's starting with Alzheimer's disease, stage 1, preclinical Alzheimer's. Then he has mild cognitive impairment, those senior moments at age 66 that people say, it's just normal age. Well, no, that was mild cognitive impairment due to Alzheimer's disease dementia. And finally, at age 72, he's diagnosed, you have dementia, your brain is shrunken. Today, you are diagnosed with Alzheimer's. But that's not true. He had Alzheimer's disease beginning in his brain decades. In this little video, it was 20 years, but realistically, it's 30 to 40 years we can notice changes. The brains of infants that are born with the most common Alzheimer's gene, called the ApoE4 variant, which, Randy, you got to look at your 23andMe, and you can check how many variants you have, 0, 1, or 2. And then a video of me without hair, without makeup, sleep deprived, bags under my eyes, still bitter, middle seat, killing me, 23andMe. I get to talk to you about your results, your genetic results. So if anyone's done 23andMe, you can check. If you have an ApoE4 variant, I'm sorry, but you were born with a smaller brain than someone with a 0. But that's not a bad thing, because some ApoE4s are some of the most amazing people I know, because it's a smaller brain that you had to fight through, and then you create additional pathways, especially if you have 2 copies of the ApoE4 variant. And then that is called neurodevelopmental diversity. Your brain is at a disadvantage at the beginning. You can fight through it. And some of the most, literally, some of the most amazing, forward-thinking, like amazing people I've ever met are way overrepresented as ApoE4/4s. Higher risk of Alzheimer's, but a really interesting mind, an academic mind. So we take all this and we say, wait a minute, what are the statistics? And we think of Alzheimer's as, you know, a disease of someone in their 70s and 80s, right? And that's important, and we need to treat people in their 70s and 80s for both prevention and treatment. But if at age 85, and this is a disputed statistic, 40, 42%, 45%, depending on which thing you read. I once saw 33%. If at age 85, let's say 40% of people have Alzheimer's, that means the disease first started in their brains between the ages of 50s and 60s. It's not an older person's disease, that's a disease of middle age. But then you move the spectrum a little earlier. If at age 65, 10% of people have Alzheimer's, that disease first started in their brains between the ages of 30s to 40s. And that's why in the Alzheimer's prevention clinic, we see people age 25 and up. We started seeing patients 40 and up, and then I had a 32-year-old guy who I'll show you about in a little bit, and he begged to see me. And I said, yeah, wait a minute. Your mom has dementia, ended up being dementia with Lewy body, which is a similar cousin, very related to Alzheimer's, oftentimes indistinguishable for a while. And Max, his mom was 58 years old, so I take 58 and I minus 25 years, and that was Max. So the Wall Street Journal was actually in seeing, kind of observing this. Wall Street Journal was about to do a story on a young male caregiver for their parent with Alzheimer's, because that's a little new, different generation, millennials taking care of their parents with Alzheimer's. And then she was about to leave, and she saw Max and her mom, Kathy, and they swapped seats. And Sumanthi said, what's going on over here? And I said, it's Max's turn. We're seeing Max for prevention, we're seeing Kathy for treatment, and the story shifted. And that's really changed a lot about our entire trajectory. When the story came out, I'll show you in a little bit, our average age skewed from 50s and 60s to really 40s and 50s and earlier. So this is why we at the Alzheimer's Prevention Clinic and Center for Brain Health talk about these key considerations. When you have younger people that may or may not ever develop dementia, you have to be careful. You don't want to ever give an intervention or a recommendation that's going to cause any harm, because what if they would not have gotten Alzheimer's or dementia in the first place? So we have to apply principles that are evidence-based, meaning proven in research, ideally randomized controlled trials, but those are not as common sometimes, but we do the best we can with that, as well as safe. So evidence-based and safe. And as you may have guessed from our first couple of slides, medicine is not an algorithm. Alzheimer's prevention is not an algorithm. There is not a one-size-fits-all approach to Alzheimer's prevention. Mrs. Smith, she's going to need therapies A, B, and C because she's a woman going through the perimenopause transition, unique risk factors. And then a man, Mr. Jones, well, he has therapies X, Y, and Z because he has vascular conditions and he has this prostate problem, and you got to be careful about that. So these people that come into practice, they may get 50, 60% of similar things. But this bespoke, personalized aspect, I believe, is the only way we can move the field of Alzheimer's prevention forward. For a long time, when I was in Miami actually, back in 2007, I'll never forget the first patient I ever enrolled in an Alzheimer's trial using anti-amyloid drugs. And what is this? Big words. Amyloid is the pathologic protein that gets built up in the brain of a person with Alzheimer's. You may have heard of it. And back 15 plus years ago, they were trying to give this drug to people, and they would inject it and see how they did. And it was weird because some people seemed to do okay, and other people, nothing happened, and you never knew if it was the placebo or this or that. And then the study results came out and everything failed. And I was so confused because I swore that there was some people that did better. But there's that thing called the placebo effect, and and I don't know, like, Jill, you're driving again. Like, this wasn't miraculous necessarily, but people did get better for 6, 12 months, and then of course they started declining again. And in that study, everyone was getting an anti-amyloid drug, but we didn't have the technology to check whether or not they had amyloid in the brain. So what happened was, after the study failed, they then they had the technology, and 40% of the people in the study never had amyloid in the brain to begin with, but we were targeting amyloid. So why do I tell you this story? It's because 99% of Alzheimer's disease studies have failed, but not all failures can be considered as failures because we've learned a lot. And we try to apply these elements from research into our approach, and again, promise not to overpromise, but give people a path forward as best as we can. So I know all of you want to learn about what you can do today to help yourself tomorrow. I'm going to give you a couple-minute overview. Some people say, well, you should spend the whole talk on this. I could even spend 2 hours on this right now. The best way that you can internalize this yourself is to take the time you need to study and learn. Knowledge is power. In the fight against Alzheimer's, a 45-minute lecture with some Q&A at the end is not going to give you enough tools. That's why at the end, we're going to have coursework. Okay? Sorry. Homework, guys and gals. And it's all videos. There's another website that I can tell you, alzu.org. We've developed coursework for prevention, for high school students, college students, medical students, neurology trainees, physicians, doctors that can get CME credit, although the CME PDF button is currently broken. Sorry about that. So we have courses out there for everyone to learn. Okay? And that's been our goal. We've had over I think we're almost at like 2.4, almost 2.5 million unique users that have taken our coursework, which is pretty cool. I only saw 700 patients in the clinic in 8 years, but we educated over 2 million people online, and that's pretty cool. So what do we do? Well, there are things you can change, modifiable, and things you can't change, non-modifiable. You can't change your age. I made the Botox joke yesterday at Harbor's Edge. They didn't like that one either. That didn't work. Note to self. Fountain of Youth, St. Augustine, is that like a couple hours from here? I don't know if that's going to work either, but who knows. Can't change your age. You can't choose your parents. That's your family history. You can't change your past medical problems, but you can change your future ones and management of them. You can't change your level of education at baseline when you were younger, but you can have lifelong learning. You can't change past head trauma, but you can change future. Wear a helmet while biking and be careful. And a loss of smell is something you can't really change, but it's a risk factor for neurodegenerative disease, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and others. The things you can change, and if there's one thing you remember from this lecture, exercise, exercise, and exercise. The only thing that any single one of us can do today to reduce amyloid in their brain tomorrow is exercise on a regular basis. Okay? Anything's better than nothing. 15 minutes of walking after lunch is better than 0 movement throughout the day. Especially doing some exercise, getting the blood pumping after eating can kind of calm down blood sugar. I've read about that. I learned about that. I never really applied it, never really observed it until I got this little puppy. Can lower my blood sugar by 5 or 10 points just by going for a brisk walk afterward. Okay? Easy stuff. You know what? What do I do actually now at 1:30 after my lunch? I schedule phone calls. So instead of going back onto Zoom and sitting down for hours, I schedule my 1:30 most 3 days a week as a phone call. So after I eat, I walk around the FAU campus, the pretty banyan trees or something like that. I don't know. There's one big one in the middle. It's kind of nice. Walk by the stadium. I explore. Saw this big fancy airplanes flying down. So that's what I do after lunch to keep me going. Exercise doesn't have to always be scheduled. It should be scheduled, and we should all make time for exercise, but you can integrate it in your day. I have a Peloton desk. Okay, I went on Etsy, nothing to disclose. I don't have any relationships with Etsy.com or the Peloton desk maker. I am on the Peloton Health and Wellness Council, but they have never compensated me. They did give me a free bike. I'll take that one. I still pay my subscription, but they haven't compensated me, but that's okay. And I have this Peloton desk, this wooden thing, and if I am taking a lecture, if I'm doing a meeting at night after the usual workday, 8 or 9 times out of 10, I'm doing it on my Peloton desk. And people have just gotten used to it. And on more than one occasion, later on, weeks later, I've actually seen other people on their Peloton desk taking those meetings too. I have a monthly 7 p.m. American Academy of Neurology meeting, and now at least 2, sometimes 3 of us are doing something. One person got a treadmill desk, which is kind of cool. A little bulky, it wouldn't fit in my area, but the Peloton desk works for me. Dietary patterns. You can't eat a magic blueberry and prevent or cure Alzheimer's. It doesn't work that way. But a half a cup of blueberries or strawberries several times a week over the course of a lifetime can delay cognitive decline by over 2 years based on the Nurses' Health Study. That's pretty cool. Colleague of mine, Robert Krikorian, let me just check, okay, I'm doing okay on time. Close colleague of mine has kind of taken this to the next level and said, well, what is it in the blueberry, and done all the fancy basic science stuff that you guys do that's way over my head. I'm a simple clinical guy. And he's figured out the anthocyanin antioxidant something in wild blueberries, and now he's trying to make it into a medicine. Great, still eat the blueberries, but okay, Robert, keep working on the medicine, and that's okay too. But the Mediterranean-style diet, green leafy vegetables that are plentiful, fatty fish, wild salmon better than farm-raised, albacore tuna maybe once or twice a week, no more than that because of the mercury, sardines, mackerel, lake trout, several times a week, at least 2 times a week, 3 times a week is what I do, but talk to your doctors. Berries on a regular basis, dark cocoa powder, wine in moderation, probably less is more, a couple glasses per week total, 1 glass with dinner, but an early dinner at least 4 to 5 hours before bedtime, otherwise it messes with your sleep-wake cycles, really critical. So lots to learn about diet. There's several videos in that course that can talk about that. I've written a book all about diet. I've written a couple books about diet. I'm never writing a book again. Talk to my therapist about that as well. Totally over writing books. I make 12, if you want to buy my book, no, I'm sorry, I make 37 cents every time you buy my book. So yes, I have something to disclose, but you're welcome to do that. Otherwise, most of the information's online. Cognitive engagement, coming to classes, lectures like this, adult education classes, learning something new, a new language, a musical instrument. These are things that have spillover effect. Having a sense of purpose. Retirement is great. I'm jealous. I'm waiting. I'm kind of got my student loans to pay off, and then we'll figure out retirement. I think I'm 20-something years away from that, unfortunately. But the countries with the earliest retirement also have the earliest onset of cognitive decline. Okay, so if you're going to retire early, great. Enjoy the beach, enjoy whatever. A couple days a week, do something. Give back and stay engaged. Learning something new, musical instruments especially. Sleep. I could probably spend 20 minutes on sleep alone. That exercise loosens up the amyloid. The sleep is when the garbage people come. They take out the trash. Okay? Without sleep, you can't detoxify the brain of amyloid. And I have so many people that are like the New York, crazy lifestyle, and they're running around, and I'm tough, I can get by on 5 hours sleep. Well, you think you can, but your brain can't. And the brain decline is significant. I have one guy who's also pictured in here. His cognitive assessments, he's 42, I think, when I saw him, a collegiate football player who was in one of our studies. His cognitive assessments were at the 52nd percentile when he started. Okay, that's average, but he was a smart guy, so why is he at 52nd percentile? We changed his sleep, we changed to this, we changed to that. His attention and speed of processing, 98th percentile, just within 6 months of fixing sleep and doing a couple of little tweaks. That additive benefit over the life course is tremendous. So please don't burn the candle at both ends. You're not going to win. Let's see, social engagement, stress reduction. I don't know how to use this thing. And then finally, CV, cardiovascular risk reduction. Things like high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes. If you want to fast forward cognitive decline and Alzheimer's, smoke cigarettes, don't control your cholesterol, do all that kind of stuff. And cholesterol is a loaded topic, and it's complicated. It's a very complicated topic. but see a doctor on a regular basis. Get the blood pressure under good control. And if your blood pressure or blood sugar are borderline, it's too high. Okay, our reference ranges that doctors use nowadays, I love primary care doctors. I have empathy because it's like I have an hour and a half with a patient or more. A lot of primary care doctors have 15 minutes. They have to deal with the spleen, the lungs, the liver, the whatever, the brain, impossible. Borderline, let's shoot for better. Like, you don't want to be a C student in college. Like, you don't want to have average blood sugar levels, okay? That little bit of difference can really go a long way when it comes to preventative health. So I tried to summarize this in something called the ABCs of Alzheimer's prevention management. And the ABCs are kind of the cornerstones of what we follow in a patient. We follow the A, anthropometrics. That's a big word for body composition, percent body fat, muscle mass. These are critical things. As the belly size gets larger, the memory center in the brain gets smaller, okay? Bigger the belly, especially in women, body fat around the visceral area in women fast forwards cognitive decline, especially in women who are at highest risk. Men, fat's important, belly fat's important for men too, but it's actually, I think, this is my guess, I don't think it's been proven yet, but muscle mass for men is critical for brain health and cognitive maintenance. So these are things, again, sex differences in Alzheimer's prevention care is critical, and we follow this quite closely. It's not all about losing weight, it's about losing body fat and gaining muscle mass. I wish more people understood the difference and tracked it. You can buy a $20 scale, a $300 scale, whatever one you want, you can track this at home. It's all about the balance. More muscle, less fat, better health. Blood biomarkers. We look at cholesterol, we look at inflammation, nutrition markers, we look at metabolism, blood sugar, and we also look at some genetics. And then finally, we do cognitive assessments, and we do all these things every 6 months. And then that way we can understand how a person will do over time. We've written lots of papers on this, 30 or 35, 40 papers on this overall approach and results. We have a next paper coming out April 26th. I think the embargo lifts on sex differences, which is why I've been talking a lot about sex differences, because we just got the paper accepted last week. You know, there are systemic things that all people should do, and then there are targeted things that some people should do. And this is the critical differentiation in precision-based care, and that's the future of medicine. I was trying to keep it simple, but this is the hard thing. If this, then this, if this, then this, if this, then this, and we're always like analyzing and looking and recalibrating, and this is really hard and time-consuming. One day we're going to have a computer do this. The multimodal interventions that we prescribe based on these individualization is kind of summarized here. Learning, learning, and learning is critical. We've actually studied learning outcomes in multiple randomized trials. We've published in real journals. Yes, education can be used as an intervention against cognitive decline. We've actually studied courses, randomized people to different learning styles, published in real journals like Journal of Neurology and things like that. So knowledge is power. The NIH, the National Institutes of Health, and they're our government funders of research. You have to believe everything the government tells you, so we'll read this together. Defines precision medicine as an emerging approach for disease treatment and prevention, taking into account individual variability in genes, environment, and lifestyle for each person. I hate reading slides. It's a bad pedagogical practice. That was a good word, SAT word. That's when I learned that one. I hate reading slides, but I read this because this is really true. Okay? Individualizing care is the future of medicine. Again, I have empathy for doctors. I don't know how most primary care and other all specialty doctors spend 15, 20 minutes with a patient. It's just not possible to accomplish these things. But Sims, like the clothing store, a well-educated consumer is my best customer. I think I remember that from a commercial. Y'all can learn about this yourself. You guys should know, guys and gals should know your numbers. Everyone in here should know your percent body fat, know your cholesterol. What's the LDL? What's the HDL? What's my blood pressure? Oh, my blood pressure's borderline, 140/80. That's fine, right? Go exercise. No, it's not fine. People that change their blood pressure in a randomized study 140s over 80s, if you get it down instead to 120s over 70s or below in a 3-year randomized study, just 3 years of more aggressive blood pressure control, reduced the likelihood of developing the earliest symptomatic phase of dementia by 19%. Okay? So it's all about knowing your own numbers and taking control of your own brain health. Average age in that study was 71. So yes, lower blood pressure, you have to be careful with falls and this and that. You know, there's a lot of benefits. The lower the blood pressure in that study, just an article came out literally like a week or two ago, the lower the pressure, the higher the blood flow was in the brain. How interesting. The body knows. The body knows that the blood pressure is lower, so it auto-regulates and it increases the blood flow to the brain. Paradoxical, but it explains a lot of things. So this is Max. This was that appointment. And actually, Kathy's actually sitting right next to him here, but you can't see it. Max is actually coming out with a documentary about his journey through our program, through our clinic with his mom. It's called, I wonder if I can say this. Maybe I shouldn't say this. It's being recorded, so I'm not going to say anything. It's being looked at by a major, you know, movie, whatever, yada, yada. But for the last 5, 6, 7 years, he's made it his mission to tell this story about his own personal health journey and about his mom. And this was that story that came out in September 2014, Alzheimer's Prevention for 30-somethings with no symptoms, to really put Alzheimer's prevention with a younger spin on the map. And I'm really appreciative this story came out. And then back in December 2019, took 5 years of blood, sweat, and tears, but we proved through our research that when people came to our clinic and followed our approach for 18 months, people with MCI, it's a weird term, mild cognitive impairment, which is the earliest symptomatic phase of Alzheimer's disease. People with mild cognitive impairment that followed greater than 60% of all the recommendations we gave, on average 21 individualized recommendations per person. This is why it made the Wall Street Journal and all the outlets and yada yada, because at 18 months, the people with MCI that followed the plan had better cognitive function than they did at baseline. There's no drug that's ever been shown to improve cognitive function. They've had drugs to slow decline, and we use these drugs, but never to improve cognitive function. That being said, it took a lot of work. Alzheimer's prevention, unfortunately, is not for the faint of heart. This is a whole thing. I don't want to say it takes over your life, but it's a big part of your life, and you have to spend, you know, hours, 7 to 8 hours on average per week thinking about the brain and thinking about your health. Of course, that includes exercise. It also has some cost to it, too, whether it's a vitamin or a supplement or joining a gym or buying a Peloton. So again, we need to democratize this. We will, but we need to get the instruction booklet first, and we're making progress. And even in this study, this is Steve, great guy, just had his 50th birthday. I missed it. He invited me to his 50th birthday. He is doing amazing. You wouldn't believe, but he came in, I think he was 42 years old. Yeah, probably 42 years old. It was 8 years ago. And looked like a young, healthy guy, real strong, yada, yada. Cognitive function was just not where it needed to be, and everything improved. Cardiovascular, everything about him improved. He felt better subjectively, but that doesn't mean much in research. We proved it through a longitudinal study. And people pre-Alzheimer's pathology, and also people with preclinical Alzheimer's, amyloid in the brain but no symptoms, also had improved cognitive function at 18 months of treatment. Okay? That's why it made the headlines. Yay! Now we need to prove this at multiple sites, international consortium. I call you guys at FAU, then COVID hits, now I'm here, now we have 9 sites, and we'll hopefully prove this in a large international cohort study in a few years. Give us some time. Hopefully we'll get there. You mentioned 23andMe, and I want to just check time. Okay, I'm going to try to wrap up in a 5 to 7 minutes or so we can have some time, sufficient time for questions. But 23andMe is a way that people can check their genetics. And the future of Alzheimer's disease prevention, I really believe this, is through genetics. When COVID hit, changed a lot of our lives for the bad, most of our lives for the bad. When COVID hit, people couldn't come to the clinic. We didn't have a way to do cognitive testing. We couldn't do blood draws. It took a few months. We now do cognitive testing through the internet. That's amazing. We can now send blood kits to people, and we've got blood draw sites. So COVID helped in some ways. But what COVID really helped is I had way fewer patients, so I could go way deeper on individual patients. And in May of 2020, I started my first spelunking mission, okay, cave diving exploration, and all my abundance of free time COVID world to whole genome sequencing. And whole genome sequencing means that you can take the entire sequence of a person's DNA, 20 million gene parts, as opposed to 23andMe, which only looks at about 600,000 gene parts, which is still a lot. And we can go a really deep dive. And we spent on that first person, one person, we spent 5 months going through this person's DNA. And then we did 2 more people, took like 3 to 4 months. It was a father and a daughter. The mother had Alzheimer's, so I didn't have her DNA, unfortunately, but I tried to tease out, and that for the first time we could figure out what DNA the girl got from the father and what DNA the father didn't have, so that way we implied that the genes were from the mother. So that was very interesting. Again, that took 3 or 4 months for 2 people. So over the coming 2 years, we did get better, we got more efficient. We've now reached our Baskin-Robbins number, 31. We've done 31 whole genome sequences, 25 patients and 6 family members. I think I'm getting that right. Or maybe it was 18 patients and 7 family members. We're writing this up. That's right. It's 25 people in the paper. We have 31 people total. We had to stop because it got overwhelming and time-consuming and expensive. Cost tens of thousands of dollars per person. And I know that sounds crazy, but one day we'll have an instruction booklet and we'll have a computer code to do this for us, or at least bring the cost down, but we're not there yet. So whole genome sequencing, how do I put this? Anyone listen to podcasts, medical podcasts? There's a guy named Peter Attia. Ever hear that guy, maybe? So, yeah, so Peter's a guy who's kind of like a futuristic thinker and a very forward thinker with preventative health. And I kind of went for him for advice, and he said, "You're crazy. You're wasting your time. You're wasting your money." And I don't like when Peter Attia disagrees with me. So it took 2 years. And today on the way here, he saw a story about something on the news or whatever, and he texted me, he said, "Hey, can you get whole genome sequencing on my patient?" So what that means is over the last 2.5 years, I think we've actually made a positive step forward. In the research paper that's still being edited, and we're probably not going to submit it for at least 3, 4, 5, 6 months, very complicated paper, we've shown that 44% of the time that we spend all this crazy amount of time and money per patient, which is not scalable yet, but hopefully we get there, we make a change in the person's medical care based on what we find in the genome. 44% of the time is a heck lot higher than 0. It's not perfect, and it's time consuming, but it's our first step forward. What we did, and we're just presenting this at the Society of SGIM, Society for General Internal Medicine. Maya, one of our Stanford med students that we've collaborated, med students, geez, she's older now. She's a PGY4. She's older. She's almost done with residency. She's presenting a paper at SGIM doing actually pre versus post. Like, okay, we tried something, and then what actually happened? And we have 5 cases where we have follow-up data 6 months later. And these data are striking. Problem is, it's 5 cases. No one is going to believe anything when it's 5 cases. And the other part, again, is more than half of the people that we did this on, we found nothing, spent tens of thousands of dollars, and you know, I don't want to say we wasted time, but it's all part of the scientific inquiry process. So I think this is the future, and I wish I had 100 people and a lot more time, but I think in the coming years this is going to be the next step forward in our process. ApoE is by far the most common gene that you can all check in 23andMe. If you have 1 or 2 copies, it doesn't mean you're going to get Alzheimer's disease, but it does increase your risk. If you don't have it, you still may get Alzheimer's because there's other genes. There's 30-something genes otherwise that can increase risk of Alzheimer's. But what we found in this crazy spelunking mission is that different people with different E4s were at higher risk and different were at lower risk, and it's all about polygenic risk. Polygenic means it's not just E4, it's about this gene increases risk and that gene decreases risk, and how do we calculate what the cumulative effect is? And this is complicated. It's not just a mathematical formula, but we take ApoE and we look at the mitochondrial haplogroup, which I won't get into, but it's confusing. And basically we now can further subdivide and characterize ApoE into different genetic kind of buckets. And this was a major step forward. This is a big part of that paper that we've been working Retain is a company that was funded by the NIH. It's a Small Business Innovation Award. This is a guy who I met a long time ago as a based at the University of Cincinnati, and I've been helping with this with a group of people kind of all over the place, both in Miami, the Miami Jewish Home, people in Cornell in New York City. And this is a software device that a randomized controlled trial is going to be started in June, and the software will try to automate a lot of the stuff that we do in the clinic. It's very different than the clinic exactly, because they have researchers from all over the world that have given them advice, and they basically program. I talk to someone and tell them how I do things. They read the papers that we publish, and they basically aggregate all these rules that come out in the science, and then program the software to interact with the person and have a virtual relationship with the person at risk. I actually have never used the software, but I got the link to try it out today. So I'm looking forward to that. And the study will start in June, and I'm really excited to be a part of that. The next phase of this is to add kind of blood tests and other things, and I think that stuff will come. So to conclude, we've talked about a whole lot of things. I hope I've been able to whet your appetite that you can grab the bull by the horns. You can take control of your brain health. Nothing magical, but if you go to faumedicine.org/ALZ, or you can go to / again and do course, it'll take you right there. You'll see this icon no matter what. You click on it, you can watch it on a YouTube, whatever. You can watch individual videos, and it's all right there. I think a lot of people say, well, what is it really like to be a participant in this research? So back in 2016, we had our first ever group, kind of a Alzheimer's prevention support group, so to speak, so that people who were going through the program could meet each other. So I wanted to show a quick video of that experience.
I became really interested for myself, my future of my children, and the study of Alzheimer's in general.
We try to live the lifestyle that you recommend, and the foods that you recommend. We're trying to get ahead of things.
My grandmother was diagnosed in her late 50s. I had an uncle who was diagnosed in his early 60s. And then my father was diagnosed in his mid-60s. What led me to seek out Dr. Isaacson was actually my father's suicide, which was a couple of summers ago. He had been diagnosed at that point for about 4 years, and he was having a very difficult time with it, and he decided to take his own life. I wanted to take a more proactive approach to the disease, which nobody really in my family has done. It's been wonderful because I feel I'm learning a lot about the disease. I feel like I'm in control a little bit more. And so there's a lot of sort of quality of life things that I am working through and trying to incorporate into my life.
My mom started showing signs of cognitive decline, which began when she was 59 years old. For me, that was very traumatic. But once the initial trauma subsided, I felt very empowered because I had this passion for science and health, and I stumbled upon a poster that was promoting a lecture about preventing dementia. And then a light bulb went off in my head that that's a really powerful idea, and I needed to be in that room for that lecture.
So today, this evening, you've taken time out of your family's lives, out of your personal lives, and you've been in the room for that lecture. So I ask you 2 questions. What change will you make today to protect your brain health tomorrow? And which technological advance could you try to optimize your brain and body health? With that, thank you so much for your time.